We're all part of one universe that moves ever upward and onward to greater glory.
Over the past few years, Marvel has been increasing the MCU's size and therefore their revenue streams. With this idea, more Marvel TV shows were born. These shows continue aspects of the MCU and introduce new things for future films to adapt to. But what are these shows, and what will they do to the landscape the MCU has built over the past 10 years? In today's list, we will be going over the new Marvel TV shows that are going to change everything. You don't want to miss this list. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. Now, onto the list. First up, WandaVision. Though the show has already aired, it plays a big role in the upcoming Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We get a setup for new powers coming in the MCU with magic and the idea of a Nexus being. The show opened the floodgates for possible new characters and events to occur from the comics, the shows, and the movies. Outside of the diegetic world of Marvel, the show also broke records for the streaming service Disney+. The show was one of the most streamed shows this year when it launched and continued so through its 9 episodes. Next up, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Again, this show has already aired, but is a huge leap for Marvel TV and the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. In the show, we wrapped up some stories with the Falcon and Bucky, but also the show led us into a new era of Captain America as Falcon took over the mantle of Captain America from Steve Rogers. This show sets up the idea of other actors taking over the roles from others. It just shows us how the MCU is going to change going forward, especially when it comes to the next generation of heroes. Next up, Loki. Loki is a celebration of the long-living character played by Tom Hiddleston, but overall the show seems to be heading in a direction as to open the MCU up to alternative timelines and the idea of more ethereal beings in the universe. With the introduction of the TVA and the Timekeepers, the audience have now been introduced to alternative versions of characters, which could lead to even more characters being shown off. The show seems to aim to blow the MCU wide open and introduce fans to new things that will be showing up in the future. Another type of setup show for the huge movies to come. Next up, What If? What If is going to set up the idea of alternative universes and to tell alternative stories of all of our favorite Marvel characters. It isn't necessarily going to introduce new things for future MCU endeavors, but it's going to show us all what ifs of different scenarios. One, for example, is if Peggy Carter became Captain America instead of Steve Rogers. This leads to the Captain Britain episode of the series. The show could give the audience some more stories to hold them over for the later films in 2021 and give them some more endeavors with previous MCU actors. The show also features the final MCU appearance of the late Chadwick Boseman. Next up, Ms. Marvel. The first show that's going to introduce us to a brand new character as our protagonist in these shows. Ms. Marvel will follow a young girl as she gets used to her powers in the MCU. As you can tell, she's a huge fan of Captain Marvel. It doesn't seem like the show will change too much about the MCU or the Marvel landscape, aside from introducing a very young superhero for future endeavors in the MCU. Even though the show is small in the grand scheme of things, it should create an interesting character for the younger fans to follow along with. Next up, Moon Knight. With this show, we don't know much about the plot, but we do know that it will follow the themes of the comic version of the character. This means the show will be very deep into mental health, personalities, and religion, which are all heavy themes. This show won't be for everyone, but creates a new pillar in the MCU left by the Netflix TV shows. A much darker show is on the horizon with Moon Knight, and it will open up even more avenues for these sorts of characters. We have no idea what the plot will do to the MCU, but the idea of its existing is insane for the future of these shows. With Oscar Isaac playing the titular character, Moon Knight is something to look forward to. Next up, She-Hulk. She-Hulk will introduce the character of Jennifer Walters to the MCU. She is Bruce Banner's cousin and is also a lawyer in the comics and the MCU. We don't know what the show will entail, but we will be seeing both the Hulk and the Abomination returning from previous MCU ventures. The show should open up the idea of other heroes entering the MCU involved with ones we know. It could also open us up to even more street-level characters as Jennifer Walters is involved with stopping crime. Next up, Secret Invasion. This show is going to change a lot of things if it follows its comic roots. This show is based on the popular story of Secret Invasion from Marvel Comics, where it is revealed that a lot of characters in the Marvel continuity are actually the alien Skrulls. If we see this story in the MCU version, it's going to change most of the MCU. The audience will question who they have been following for these past few years and who is actually who they say they are. This show should be one of the biggest things the MCU has done yet, even over Avengers Endgame. Next up, Ironheart. Ironheart should be a show to continue the legacy of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. This show seems to be following his daughter as she becomes the next Iron Man type character in the MCU named Ironheart. We have no idea what the show's plot will be, but it seems like Ironheart will allow us to move on from Tony Stark's death in Avengers Endgame and welcome a new generation of heroes. This idea of the next generation is definitely what Marvel is going for with some of these shows. They want us to accept the changes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and see what new heroes are arriving. Next up, Armor Wars. And our final show today is Armor Wars, which will star Don Cheadle back as War Machine. The main thing we know about this show is its comic version. Armor Wars in the Marvel Comics is about Tony Stark's suits being used for the military and them being used for evil. We should assume the show will follow a similar theme and reinforce the idea of a world without Tony Stark. The show should lay out the future for the character, the work, and the people he left behind. Hopefully, we deal with some more of the consequences of Tony Stark's death in the world of the MCU and the tech involved in it. And that's our list. Though it seems like we don't know much about some of the future Marvel Cinematic Universe shows, we can see the upcoming landscape that they are going to create. We are being introduced to new characters and mechanics for the shows to use and follow. Shows like Loki and WandaVision are going to be setting up the main parts of the next phase of Marvel, which seems to be multiverse characters and alternative timelines. These new parts of the MCU open up for a lot of characters to appear and return. We already know the next few movies in Phase 4 will deal with the multiverse. Spider-Man No Way Home seems to be dealing with alternative Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness will deal with a breaking multiverse. The idea of multiverses changes the MCU in its entirety, as it means lots more characters can appear. We could see even more of our favorite Marvel characters in different scenarios or even other versions of them, especially when it comes to Spider-Man No Way Home. From leaks, it seems like we will be seeing alternative Spider-Man in the form of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield returning to their roles as Spider-Man. To close out this list, the MCU is going to be changing, and hopefully for the better. We will see even bigger films and shows than we have before, and they should be even better. The scale of the MCU is way bigger than before, so look forward to it. You can see that this world is in good hands. Hopefully it stays on track and we get some amazing films and shows. We could even see a bigger film than Avengers Endgame in the future. Hopefully you enjoyed this list. Let us know what you thought about it in the comments, and don't forget to let us know what you think is going to change from these shows releasing. We hope you enjoyed the list and continue to follow us. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on. Thanks for watching.